the application of it basically. And in the beginning, there was the big three is what I called it. So there was showing the numbers. So hitters showing their numbers to the pitcher. There was the downhill shoulder angle. So that's the side bend side of it. And then there was the hiding of the hands. And I know you came to kind of a conclusion about that front arm shape being barred out or even slight bend, but pretty close to being barred out. So the hands don't necessarily, they used to teach walk away from the hands, right? So that to me is translated as the hands going back towards the catcher. But it's actually, it should go back at an angle back where we say hiding the hands from the pitcher. So the hands should end up at landing somewhere above or behind the back heel. So if the pitcher is watching this hitter, and again, go look up Mike Trout, go look up JD Martinez, go look at Mookie Betts, look at all these guys, and you'll see them, number one, showing their numbers. Number two, not all of them have a downward shoulder angle, but many of them do. Mickey Cabrera, Ted Williams, if you want to go back in the day, a lot of hitters in the Stan Musial, they used to say that it looked like he was a little kid peeking around a corner, right? And it was the showing numbers part of it. And you see them all hiding their hands. So from the minute they start to at landing, you see their hands disappear. So those were the big three. And what's happening fascia-wise is we're taking the front shoulder, and we're bringing it down and in towards the back hip. So that gives you that kind of slight down angle, and it gets you, we've evolved showing numbers to more creating neck pressure. Because every hitter's different. You and me being a little bit older, although we do a lot of movement work on our own body, so we probably move better than people our age. But a lot of, hitters are different in how far they can get their head here, because one of the biggest things that people hated with showing the numbers was that, well, it pulls the hitter's eyes off the ball. And yeah, if you do it too much, but the head's got to anchor down in a position. So if I go sideways, so the head's got to anchor in a tracking position, not necessarily square off to the pitcher, but intercept where the ball's coming in, all Dr. Peter Fatty stuff, and head anchors. And then we just pull that shoulder underneath as far as you can. And that's going to create some tension in the neck. So it's like a wringing towel. It's like we're wringing a towel out. So where your head is on top, the top hand, and that your shoulders are the bottom hand. And we're just wringing as far as we can. We're taking that spine and that section of the spine, and we're just wringing it as hard as we can until landing, and then we just let it go. So it's kind of like, you can call it I call it more of a spring than some people call it rubber bands, like get the rubber bands really tight and then let them go. It's like a rubber band system. Kind of, but it's more spring-y. So those are the big three. If you connect the dots between what fascia is, what the spinal engine is, it's easy way to think about it is a wringing towel. Like you're wringing the towel, it's loading that system up and then letting it go. And like I said, I ran quite a few swing experiments that proved that showing numbers versus not showing numbers, you add between 4 to 6 miles an hour of bat speed. And I can't remember if I did a ball exit speed one, but bat speed and ball exit speed are very similar. They're like first or second cousins. So it's very translatable. The down shoulders added 4 miles an hour of bat speed, and the showing numbers I think was 3 miles an hour, or 1 to 2. It wasn't quite as much. The big one was showing the numbers or creating that neck pressure.
So what this does is it winds up the body so that you can then deliver more force.
Yes. Yeah, it takes the slack out of the system. So slack being a little different than how the human body, because we talked about it's more compression tension forces, that's taking slack out. But it's almost like if you think about a car that goes into a ravine, and then you have a Jeep with a winch on the front that you can take the cable, hook it up to the bumper of the car that's been dropped in the ravine, and to pull that car out, right? So you turn the winch on, and if you have slack in the cable that's connected to the bumper, and you turn that winch on right away, because there's slack in the cable, it's going to just pull the bumper off. It's not going to pull the car out of the ravine. So what you have to do first is, after you hook the bumper, is you got to slowly take that slack out of the cable of the winch line, and then turn it on, and it'll pull the whole car out. So that's slack versus no slack. Some people out there have been on a toboggan on the lake, and you've been, boat pulling you along, and you're holding on to the ski line or whatever. You're holding on to the ski bar, right? And they're pulling you along. And we had a buddy who did this with us. And at the time I was super strong. I was lifting a lot. And he goes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it as hard as I can to you. I was like, all right, do it. Bring it, man. So he got it to where he's pulling me at first. So there was no slack in the line. The line was nice and tight. And then he got me to where I started coming up to the side of the boat. So he kind of slowed it down a little bit. And then I started kind of floating up and started putting slack in the line. And then he floored it. And boom. And that I held on. And there was one time I think I ended up letting go. But that amount of force all at once with a slack in the line, oh my gosh. So what happens is with most
You're lucky you didn't hurt yourself. It sounds
right. Yeah, dude, we were like 25 years old.
Right.
You never get hurt.
Right.
But that's the thing. So when youth hitters, a lot of times what I see is these coaches say, keep your shoulders square. Don't show your numbers to the pitcher for all these different reasons we can go into some other time. But they want the shoulders square. They don't want you tilting them. They don't want you turning them in. They want them square. And then they want the hips to do everything. And so what's happening is that's putting slack in the system, because to take slack out, we just talked about, is like that wringing towel. We have to wring the towel and then let it go. And that's where you get a nice, powerful move, consistently powerful move, and it's safe on the spine, versus the opposite, where the coach wants this shoulder square, doesn't want any turning in or down or anything like that. And they want this swing powered by the pelvis or the hips. They say, explode the hips, load and explode the hips. And what happens there is you're taking the equipment of the lower back, the 5 vertebrae in the lower back, who actually are not made to rotate. They're not built to rotate, the bones, okay? All they can do is flex and extend. The rotation that you see is about 7 to 12 degrees. And this is via Tom Myers. This is pretty prominent, can't remember his name right now, physical therapist, been around forever in the strength conditioning world. 7 to 12 degrees of rotation is all that's allowed because of the muscles surrounding those bones. So that's the rotation you see is that 7 to 12 degrees of rotation you see is because of the muscles surrounding the bones. The thoracic spine, so shoulders and then the rest of it that attaches up to the top of the lumbar, the lower back, is made to rotate, is actually made to rotate 40 degrees, 40, in both directions. So I should be able to do a good moving human body can move 40 degrees to the left and can rotate 40 degrees to the right. So when you employ a part of the body that isn't allowed to rotate and to not only rotate, but explode, like absolutely explode. Now what happens is we start wearing holes in the lower back. We see back spasms, we see herniated discs, we see all kinds of stuff. And the swings that we're referring to earlier about the barrel moves the body, not the body moves the barrel, body moves the barrel. So those ones that are teaching barrel moving the body, what I see in those swings is I see these hitters on Twitter where their back is arching. They're arching, and you can almost draw, for righties, you can draw a reverse C shape. And for lefties, you can draw a C shape, like from their head, down their back and out their leg. Because they're arching so much, you can see this kind of C shape going on. And the problem with that is extension is okay. So if you arch your back in just a normal, sagittal plane, like a front to back plane, like you do a lunge or a squat in, a normal extension is fine. An arching of the back is fine. You see a gymnast when they swing the bar, when they're swinging under the bar, right? You'll see them go into a globally flexed position where their spine kind of looks like this. And then as they swing through, they go into a globally arched. And global just means the whole body is arched. There's not one little point that's arched, say like in my head, if I went and I just dropped my head back and I went into an extended position with my neck and not using my body as well, that would be a local extension. Those aren't usually good when they're coupled with the rotation. So when the hitter is going into an arch position, that it by itself isn't troublesome. But the minute you add a rotation in with that, now when you arch, you're pushing the vertebrae together on in your back when you arch. Okay. Now that again isn't a big deal, but the minute you start rotating, now you're grinding. And that is a problem. And that's what I see when you teach hitters the barrel moves the body, and to snap the barrel back, way back here. When I see those swings, I see those hitters arching their back and turning, and it just makes me want to throw up, because these coaches it's like a cat, right? Cats are either really, really smart or they're really, really stupid. And to me, it looks like those coaches don't know any better, and they're getting their information from some guy who doesn't know any better, who knows better, but he's not teaching the right thing. And it's horrible to see these young hitters doing that.
In your so what you would say is the main thing that separates the great hitters from the average, or just the good, has to do with this sort of building the tension, not creating slack in the torso area and the upper legs, basically, of the body.
Right, exactly. So if you go back and Ted Williams, you look at Stan Musial, you look at even Babe Ruth, and not all of them have every single principle. Like they could have, and they could have done better. You could even look at Tony Gwynn, right? There was an article I do that every time I put it up on social media, I said something in the article or in the headline to the effect of, could Gwynn have had more power? And I just did an analysis and took a look at his swing and pointed out areas where he could have maximized or optimized his power. And a lot of people don't like that. You know, Tony Gwynn, how could you be, you know, how many hits did you get in the big leagues? And how could you take on Tony Gwynn? You don't know what you're talking about. I was like, no, dude, it's a thought experiment. I'm not going after the guy, right? He didn't want to hit for power. Although when he had his talk with Ted Williams, his power numbers sure went up a little bit because Teddy told him, hey, you might want to pull the ball and own your pull field a little bit more. And that year after he had that talk with him, I think he went from like 11 home runs a season. I think he hit maybe 20 or 18 or something like that. But this idea that Ted Williams is probably one of the best at it. You see the showing numbers, or in his case, a number 9. You see his down shoulder angle. You see him hiding the hands. You see this locked out front lead arm when he started his swing. Like, he's got it all of it. The only thing I don't agree with, that it's not a bad thing per se, extra motion, is the idea where he turned his hips in slightly. So he kind of turned the hips in like he was turning towards the catcher. And I did this, I read that book, you know, that in high school and college and stuff like that, because that's where I thought power was in the pelvis. But if you think about fascia, turn my hips in and I'm creating my neck pressure, showing my numbers, and I'm pulling the shoulder in. Well, if my hip's going away from my back hip, which I'm supposed to be taking my front hip and or my front shoulder, and I'm bringing it to my back hip. Well, if my back hip is going away and my front shoulder is chasing, well, you're continually chasing. So you never get to that point, right? So if we just keep the pelvis in neutral, so belt buckle pointing at home plate, we don't inward turn or anything, and just let the shoulders do what they do, creating neck pressure, showing numbers, going into that position there, then now we're compressing where we need to. And what happens is when you inward turn the pelvis, and we're seeing data on this, Xenolink, Chris Welch of Xenolink.com, Zeno link.com. So he does a lot of experimentation. He's kind of physical therapist guy, very, very knowledgeable. And he's got a lot of data. He's got force plates. He's got all this different stuff. And so I had one of my online hitters went to him. Chris is on the East Coast. Went to him to go through all his testing, evaluation stuff. And Chris was saying that this particular hitter's barrel speed was super maximized behind him, which is, again, the same people that teach barrel swings the body, right? So the barrel speed was increased or was maximized behind him, but by the time he got to impact, it was slowing down. So answer that. How are we teaching something that is actually slowing down your barrel by the time you get to impact? And there's a couple different factors in that we can go into if you want, but that was the whole thing. He was inwardly rotating his pelvis, and he was a lefty. So he was taking and rotating his pelvis in towards the catcher, and then get to landing, and then he would rotate. He would rotate back, you know, the pelvis back and explode into the ball. But that was causing him to have a premature maximizing of bat speed. It wasn't helping him. It wasn't maximizing his ball exit speed.
Now, so the most important thing, you mentioned 3 things. Say those again.
Of the spine?
Well, just that I think there were just 3 things.
Is that what you're talking about? The three things, the big three. Okay.
Yeah.
So showing numbers or
Okay.
creating neck pressure. So if I'm here, I'm here. So my head anchors in a tracking position. Shoulder comes pulling underneath as far as I can, just like you're wringing a towel out, right? My head and my shoulders. I'm wringing that towel out, creating pressure in the neck. So that's number one. That's a showing numbers, neck pressure. Number two is downward shoulder angle. So from this view is more of slight down shoulder. So it's like you're doing a side bend. So the back shoulder goes up, the front shoulder goes down. And with that, you don't want it to be too much. The kind of the sweet spot there is like 6 to 10 degrees down. So it's not a lot, but what helps a lot of times is controlling where that elbow goes. So I'm back this up a little bit, give you guys a little bit more room. So if I can use my elbow to pull the elbow or pull the or bring the shoulders down, steer the shoulders down, that's a way to do it. But you can also focus on taking this front shoulder down and in towards that back hip. That'll help to create this down shoulder, right? And what's interesting in the swing, if we want our body to accelerate and decelerate properly, is we want the shoulders to start down, and then as we swing, then they're going to tilt. So this front shoulder starts down, left shoulder, and then as I swing, it's going to go up. And then in my finish, think about the Ted Williams pictures and Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth and all these guys. How do they finish? They end up finishing in this position. So what we should see is left shoulder starts down, pops up, and then it should end down. So down, up, and then down on the finish. You know those Ted Williams pictures where he's like, he's in this position, right? So it's this one, it's his left shoulder as a lefty starts, or he starts here. So his left shoulder here starts up, and then it goes down, and then it finishes up, right? So that's a proper accelerating, decelerating of the spine. So that's the second thing, that's the down shoulder. And then the last one is the hiding hands from the pitcher. So let me back this up one more time again. So if I start my swing this way, you can see my hands. And the minute I get to landing, I'm creating what you see, this back elbow peeking out behind me. So they call it a scap row or a scap load, scap pinch, whatever you want to call it. So that's the move there where now you can't see my hands. And now what I'm doing is this front shoulders, for those kines geeks out there, the front shoulder is a scap protraction. So the scap is coming in, the scapula is coming this way, coming across. And then my back scap is retracting. So they're doing the opposite of each other. Protraction, retraction, right? So that if you watch any gymnastics or Olympian doing a spin, ice skater, if they do a spin, that's what you're going to see. And a lot of people out there will say, well, I like the scap pinch, but I don't want this front shoulder coming in. And I'm like, that's not how the human body works, dude. You're not getting 100% optimization out of the rotation.
So those are showing numbers has been something that people didn't want to do. I wasn't aware of that.
And still, yeah, it's crazy.
So why did they say you didn't want to show numbers?
Good question. So the irony, by the way, these same people that don't like it swear by video analysis. They say, well, look, we're going to look and see what the best hitters do, and that's what we're going to do. And you see them do it. Again, look at Miggy, look at Ted Williams, look at Trout, look at the top 10 power hitters right now, and even in the day, and you see all of them do it. So I don't understand why they're all about video analysis, but they choose to see what they want to see, right? So what they say is the problem they say with it is that it takes the hitter's eyes off the ball. But I just talked about, we create neck pressure. So the head is the important part. That's the piece. That's the anchor. It's like a boat. I ask my hitters, what does an anchor do on a boat? It either stops the boat or it slows it down, right? So the head is the control piece. Wherever the head goes, the body follows. So the head takes a tracking position and anchors down. And then it's the shoulder that comes in as far as it can while we're wringing the towel out. And that's what's going to get you to show numbers. Now, lefties, if you watch lefties, because the camera angle at Major League Ballparks is slightly off center towards left field, right?
The Hitting Performance Lab wants to know, did you know repeatable hitting power does not start in the hips? Have you heard the expressions, load and explode the hips? Power comes from the hips. Well, we created a free video revealing the results of a scientific study that will show you how we added 48 feet of batted ball distance instantly. And it's not all about the hips. Click here now to get the video while it's still free.